Welcome to BizTech's Enterprise Technology Show, where we feature tech companies that are innovating in the large enterprise space. Now, our featured company today is Mambu, which was launched in Berlin in 2011 and later opened its Asia Pacific HQ in Singapore in 2018. Here to tell us more about Mambu and their value proposition is Myles Bertrand, Managing Director, Mambu Asia Pacific. Hey, welcome to the show, Myles.
Thanks, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here to join you today.
Now, Myles, tell us a little bit about Mambu as a company, your history, and what you actually do.
Well, you covered a couple of key points for us already in the intro, so thanks for that. Mambu is really a player in the banking space, and we were founded on a couple of really interesting principles. Our founders really believed that financial inclusion and making banking services more acceptable or available to the underbanked is one of the key things that we were built upon. They really had a look at the market and felt that banking technology was quite legacy, quite old. If there's a statistic that most of the core banking systems in the market have an average lifespan of they're all 17 to 20 years old. So they really believed about bringing technology to the masses, allowing banks and organizations to provide financial services to the underbanked and really drive that financial inclusion. And that's a principle that we still adhere to right now. And we really believe right through Asia, there is a massive opportunity for us to help support lots of different markets, particularly Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines. We're really seeing an uptake of financial services, lots of organizations offering banking capability, and Mambu really wants to be a part of that. And we really, really are proud that we can be one of the drivers of change in the banking space.
And Myles, I've got to zoom in on those three countries that you just mentioned. Now, there is a significant portion of underbanked and unbanked population. So do your solutions then help organizations, traditional banks as well as challenger banks and non-traditional financial institutions, then get into the fintech or financing space?
Yeah, Brian, exactly. We've really seen a lot of uptake over the past few years. Mambu, because Mambu is probably the next evolution, we will call fourth generation technology, cloud-based, born in the cloud, moving very much away from those big sort of legacy on-prem mainframe style deployments, means that the cost to serve is a lot lower and a lower operational cost, which means the ability of using digital technology, digital cores like Mambu allows organizations not just to acquire a customer at a lot more cost-effective means, but also support them ongoing. I mean, if we look at some of those markets like the Philippines, for example, where you've got massive penetration of mobile access and digital access through handsets, over 92%, I think. But then you've got only about 45 to 50% of the population actually banked or underbanked. There is a massive opportunity for organizations to support that market by providing financial services through digital means at a much more cost-effective model, meaning that they can provide it to the masses. And we've seen that, and I'll use the Philippines as a great example. We've seen organizations like Globe Telecom look to move into things like micro lending, offering small loans to customers that they have trusted relationships with already through their mobile phone, offering them $500, $1,000 loans, which they then can pay back through their mobile phone bill. So we're seeing a lot of innovation by organizations like that. And Mambu is really proud to be sort of the engine that's sitting behind and driving the change with organizations like telcos, insurance companies that you see around the market.
And obviously then, what do you, in terms of your product and service offerings, could you kind of elaborate on some of the things that you do for these companies, for these telcos and so forth?
So sitting behind, so in that example where you're providing a loan, you need fundamentally a loan management system. So a platform that can take the loan, work out what the repayment schedule needs to be, manage the transactions, provide the sort of core capabilities sitting behind that. So yes, you may initiate a loan or provide a loan through the mobile handset, but then you need a platform sitting behind that to manage the life cycle of the loan. And that's where Mambu comes in. We're there to provide that sort of, from the moment you trigger the loan through to the time that the customer has paid it off or you've dispersed the loan, that's where Mambu is providing the capability. And because we're a cloud native SaaS platform, as I said, businesses don't have to have that massive on-premise infrastructure or support structure to support that. We're actually allowing them to utilize that, almost using it like a service, very similar to the whole life cycle of digital banking. So we're not an end-to-end solution provider. We really see ourselves as the engine that can support a lot of different business models. The microloans I talked about in Philippines is one example. Mambu is fortunate that we have a very, very diverse customer base of very small microfinance businesses in Myanmar, for example, to the likes of tier 1 banks throughout Europe and the US that we're supporting. So it really gives us the ability to scale the platform up or down, depending on what the type of use case is, the type of organization we're supporting, giving businesses a huge amount of flexibility on what they want to do.
So Myles, what has been your go-to-market strategy in the Asia Pacific? Because obviously the banking environment is so different from Europe, where you're originally from.
Yeah, and again, you're exactly right. And I think that's something that we've taken a couple of years to get 100% right. So yeah, we set up the office in 2018. We're now a relatively biggish team here. We've got about 50 people on the ground in Asia Pacific, and we'll grow to about 90 people by the end of the year. But you're exactly right. What we didn't want to do was go just mass market in Asia Pacific. So what we did was identify markets where we believed we could add value, going back to our core principles, focus on those markets and really understand the needs of what the customer's wanting to do, what the market's trying to do, and let us make sure that we're providing a capability that supports businesses that are trying to expand. So we've been very targeted on how we've gone to market in Asia. We will continue to grow and expand. We're very fortunate that we're now in 11 countries and we've got over 30 customers across Asia Pacific, so a really good footprint. But we continue to really focus on the markets where we know that we can add value, and also where we're seeing a lot of change. Like if you look at markets like the Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, with the digital banking licenses that have been issued across all those markets right now, that's the area that we can really help. That's where we sort of really specialize in supporting businesses like that.
The other area I think that perhaps, and looking at your product profiles, that you probably identified from looking at the market closely is launching a Sharia compliant version of your platform. Can you tell us how that evolves and how do you see that panning out?
Yeah, and so that was a really interesting experience for us because we sort of came into market and we identified markets like Indonesia and Malaysia, and then we quickly identified that, hey, we've got a little bit of a gap here. If we really want to be a great business partner and collaborate in those markets, we really need to understand Islamic banking. We need to have some expertise. And interestingly enough for us, we've actually not just been doing that in Asia Pacific, we've actually had some success in the Middle East as well. So Mambu really took a bit of an initiative on providing the capability to meet the requirements, but with the flexibility, because each of these markets has a slightly different iteration of what Islamic banking means. And that's something that we really are very proud of, and something that's a fundamental for Mambu is this flexibility and the speed, so we can change things very quickly via configuration, as opposed to a lot of heavy development required on the platform.
So that is that Myles, because of the architecture of your software itself? So it's basically it's rules driven rather than coding driven, and that's the reason why it's easy to change.
Exactly right, Brian. So of all our 300 deployments and our 250 plus customers around the globe, everyone is on the same code base. So a Mambu is a Mambu. And that's one, but what we do underline is we really make sure that we've got the flexibility to meet specialized requirements like Sharia banking, Islamic banking. So the idea is we come with a model which is highly configurable, and then our customers can add additional components that allow them to solve the solution and solve the problem. And it's a model which has worked very, very well for us and allowed us to expand it. And I think we couldn't come into, particularly Islamic banking is a great example, where we couldn't come in with a very sort of hard and fast, this will work. We need that flexibility because every market is slightly different. And I think that's one of the really interesting things we have is, and the incredible diversity we have in our customer base.
And I want to zoom in on one particular customer that you've just acquired at Bank Islam, because that's quite an interesting customer in the sense that they were 20 years ago really a laggard. And then what happened was there was a new management team that was brought in, I think a decade ago, and then they kind of did a leapfrog. And obviously now it looks like they're trying to do another leapfrog. Could you kind of share with us, how you're helping them?
Yeah, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head. I think they very much have an innovative team in there right now that are really looking to the future. They can see, as a well-established institution within Malaysia right now, but they can see what's happening with digitization. They can see the digital bank licenses. They want to make sure that they don't get left behind. So they really are looking to make a move now to set themselves up to make sure they can support the customer base and the expectations of their customers moving forward. It's actually been quite a long engagement we've had with them. We really have been working with them closely for over a year and a half. And that was more about making sure they were comfortable that we could do a couple of different things for them. Be the right partner to help them make this leapfrog, if you want to talk about it. But I think the second thing as well was make sure that we were ticking all the boxes from a compliance point of view, making sure that we still meet the needs of the regulator and making sure we are supporting the Islamic and the Sharia compliance side of it as well. So it really has been quite a journey with working with them because we are, a cloud-based platform. Some regulators are still on that journey. They're still getting comfortable with cloud. They're not 100% of the way there. And that's one thing that we do invest a lot of time with. We've spent a lot of time with Bank Negara. We've spent some time with BSP in the Philippines. We do work really closely with our customers and the regulator to make sure we help and support and drive this innovation that you see in the market.
And do you think the Islamic finance industry is ready for the digital revolution? Because obviously, the likes of regulators in Singapore and Malaysia are a little bit more progressive than perhaps some of the Islamic markets in the Middle East.
Mm. Yeah, and again, I think if we'd seen it as an isolated incident and isolated with just Bank Islam in Malaysia, for example, I'd say maybe you're right, Brian. But the interesting thing for us is we've actually have customers now in Malaysia. We have 2 new customers in Indonesia. I can't announce their names at the moment that we're working with as well. And we have 2 projects in the Middle East. So what we're seeing is a bit of a theme that's occurring globally with Islamic banking, that there seems to be a genuine view that they want to evolve. They do want to leapfrog. They do want to move to next generation technology to really drive the growth. Because what we're seeing is, and I think this is just an initial thing across banking as a whole, and rightly or wrongly, COVID has had a little bit to do with this, is that banks have realized they need to think differently. They need to be able to support their customers differently, and they need to be able to do things a lot faster. They can't take 9 to 12 months to build a new product anymore. They need to be able to iterate really quickly. They need to be able to put a new loan out there in 3 to 4 weeks as opposed to months. And I think that was a really good example where we saw a lot of banks really struggle to respond to COVID. They couldn't get sort of those payment holidays capabilities, special loans out the door. So I think you've had a combination of customer expectations is driving change. You've had pandemic events, which are driving change. And also, a lot of these banks have been thinking about it, but they've never had the compelling event to really get them to start moving. And I think we've had a combination of a couple of those in the past 12 to 24 months, which means that banks probably were, I'll do it in 5 or 6 years, are saying, hey, I actually want to do this now. I want to set myself up for the future.
So now, given that change in mindset, How have your plans changed for 2021 and executing throughout Asia Pacific?
It's run as fast as I can at the moment, Brian. Honestly, we're, as I said, we're looking to employ an additional 40 people in the region in the next sort of 6 months, where we can't keep up with a bit of demand at the moment. The fortunate thing for us is because we are the type of business we are, we can actually still support a lot of our customers remotely. We can deliver remotely. We don't need to fly big teams of people around. So market has been very, very good for us. So we're continuing to invest very heavily. And that's all the aspects of what we can do to create a great customer experience, whether that not just be salespeople or account executives, but delivery people, technical support people, and ongoing customer success. So we're really building our team right across the breadth of the customer life cycle to make sure we understand Asia Pacific and have a lot of knowledge and expertise in the market, but make sure we've got the right people on the ground to really support this market.
So Myles, in particular, I want to zoom in on the three countries that you mentioned. So this is boots on the ground in places like Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines, in addition to your APAC headquarters in Singapore.
That's correct. Yeah, we're putting senior resources in each of those countries to support them, and then supporting teams that sit around them. So very much moving to having people on the ground to really understand and drive and work with exactly what is needed to support that market 100%. Glad to say we already have people on the ground in Indonesia, and we will have people on the ground in Malaysia very, very soon, and also the Philippines as well.
Now, Myles, the company has just raised your Series D round recently for over 111 million euros. Now, that brings your total funding to date to 150 plus million euros at a valuation now of 1.8 billion. So basically euros, which means you're a double US dollar unicorn. How is that capital going to be deployed?
That capital is all about growth. That's actually about supporting the business and expanding geographically. So a lot of these roles that I'm talking about, that's what that capital is for, allowing us to have more people in country to really work collaboratively with the market, really understand its needs. So the product is very mature these days, and we continue to evolve the product. But yeah, our latest capital raise is really about expansion and growth. So a market we're not that prevalent in right now is the US. So we're really investing heavily in the US. But also, fortunately, I've been empowered that I can really invest heavily in Asia Pacific as well, in particular Asia, and really grow the team and grow the business here as well. So it's really exciting times, actually. You know, it's great to be in this position. We still behave like a fintech, but we don't really call ourselves a fintech anymore. I guess we're sort of really in that scale up mode.
Yeah. So you're in scale up mode, and so the likes of your competitors, so the traditional boys like Temenos. I mean, you're in a business that is, you've got a plethora of competition. You've got the traditional boys like Temenos who are trying to evolve their products to compete with the likes of people like you. And then, of course, you've got scrappy other startups who have just been started in the last 12 months who really are offering innovative solutions as well. So that war chest obviously gives you that ability to go out and win customers.
It does. And competition is good. Like I'm a big advocate for that. I think, and there is still situations where a Temenos or my competitors, they're a better fit for purpose, but there are some situations where we are as well. And I think one of the key things for Mambu is cultural alignment. So we spend a lot of time with our potential customers up front, really understanding what they want to do, where they're going, what's their vision, what's their strategy, and making sure we're aligned. And if we're not, we're pretty upfront and open about it and say, hey, maybe we're not the best partner for you. But I think, competition continues to be a great part of what we do. Yes, I'm fortunate. I've got a bit of a war chest that allows me to go and get some good people. But again, it's about driving change. I think your point's really important, Brian, that everyone knows they need to evolve because the expectations of the market, the expectations of customers is what's driving change now. Gone are the days where you can just be, fat, dumb, and happy as a man. You've actually got to be innovative. You've got to be seen to be an innovation hub, and you need to be a leader. You've gone are the days of us walking down the road and standing in line at the bank branch.
Now, Myles, final question, and this is more of a personal question to you. You're a Kiwi. You spent most of your career in Australia, but now you're executing in the Asia Pacific region.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a leader in the Asia Pacific, and looking back at your career, what are the key business lessons that you've learned that you could share with other business leaders today?
One of the key things I've learned is two things really. I think collaboration for me has always been critical, but I also think the best leaders, and I've had a couple of mentors in my time, and I try to emulate a little bit what they've done, and that's why I call myself a servant leader. So I'm actually here to empower my team and make them successful. So I do everything I can to support my team. I can be a counselor, I can be a guide. I can actually work for them in some situations, because I really believe to be a successful leader, you need to have the right team and the right people around you. Because if they succeed, then by default, you being a leader, you will succeed as well. So the biggest lesson for me is to actually surround yourself with people who are actually smarter than you, because then you will actually be a successful leader and you will have a successful team, and you also create a great culture. And that will be the other thing, probably a third thing actually to add. Culture is everything. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. It really does. If you've got a great team and you're culturally aligned, the rest will just fall into place and you'll have a successful business.
Thank you. And culture is something that people don't stress enough on.
I agree, 100%.
Now, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the show, Myles.
Pleasure, Brian. Great to be here, and see you later, everybody.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Myles Bertrand, Managing Director, Mambu Asia Pacific, on BizTech's Enterprise Technology Show. Catch us at www.biztech.asia for business and technology conversations.